This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so we're at 4461 in Sefaria, in Chovat Halvavo, duties of the hearts, the gates of Bitachon, of trust, of faith in Hashem. And he's going to say something here, not right away, but as we work our way through, that I have some problems with. And we'll see if you guys can help me with it, or if you'll just pile on with me and say, that doesn't sound right. Let's hear. Okay. So the third aspect is how one deals either with being alone or dealing with those that we have around us, right? Different people are in different situations, right? And we're all in different situations at different points in our lives, right? And let's hear what he has to say. V'heim inyanei ishto ubanav ubnei beito ukrovav oavav oivav umyudaav umakirav. Right, so this involves our spouses, children, household members, relatives, dear friends, oivav, enemies, those who are not such dear friends, miyudaav, acquaintances, makirav, asher lamala mimenu, asher lamata mimenu, going up a generation, going down a generation, mikitot b'nei adam, from all the different people that we have or don't have around us in our lives. Ofanei yosher bitachon, ala lukim bahem. How does our trust in God, our bitachon in God, work into how we deal with these relationships or lack of relationships? Everyone fits into two categories, right? No one is not in one of these two categories. Shia nachri, o shia b'toch mishpato krovav. Either a person is alone, or a person has family and relatives around. One or the other, right? It's binary, up or down. Im nachri. Let's say a person finds themselves to be alone. Yiyet tzivato be'elokav. So on one hand, right? So that's a difficult place to find oneself, right? And we often hear that one of the indicators of a person having of longevity, a person having a long life, is one's social connections and how engaged one is with other people around them. If a person finds themselves to be alone, Yet savato be'ilokav, be'et hishtomemuto, v'yivtach alav begeruto. Okay, so if a person is a stranger where the person is living, right, so he thinks to himself that there's benefit to this solitude, in that since I feel myself alone, so I call out, I reach out to God. V'yiftach alav begeruto, and he trusts, one would trust that this is the best situation for me to be in right now. Now, it's important to note that doesn't mean that if we're in a difficult situation, yes, we accept that God put us there, but we don't have to accept that God wants us to remain there, right? We could often and we should say, okay, right, what can I do? What steps can I take to improve the situation? But while one is there, v'yaleh alibo gerut hanefesh b'olam hazeh, so one can wax philosophical and think about the fact that, right, I feel all alone in this new city. I moved to this new city. I don't know anybody here. I'm all alone. And a person can think philosophically about the soul. The soul is in a foreign place. Our souls were in a spiritual realm, and it comes down into this physical, sensual world, and it's a strange place. And we are foreigners over here. And when we're living over here, right, all those who are living in this world, every single person is a foreigner, is a stranger who comes to this strange land that we call this world, and we're here for a period of time. Kamosha Amar, because like the pasuk says in Vayikra Leviticus, Ki gerim v'toshavim atem imadi. You are foreigners, you are settlers here with me. V'yachshov b'libo, and one will think to oneself, Ki kol mi sheyesh lo krovim bo, whoever does have relatives, ad zman muat yashuv nachri boded, right? Life is very, very fleeting. And it's a matter of time, a little somber thought, but it's a matter of time until we are alone. V'lo ya'uleu karo v'lo ben, and all the relatives will no longer be able to help us. Lo yitchaber imo echad mehem, right? And there's a period of time, right? We're here for a short period of time, and then when that time is up, we will be alone, right? No matter how many people attend a person's funeral, right? On one hand, that person is alone at that time. On the other hand, our Jewish tradition and teachings reveal to us that actually at that time we are alone from those that we left behind, but we term death as a gesher hachayim, as a bridge of life. And it's a bridge that we cross from our physical world to the spiritual realm. And the same way that all those who are near and dear to us accompany us on this side of the bridge, and then there are those who have preceded us to the next realm, who are there to greet us and to escort us into that next realm. Right? So yes, at that point, everyone is alone, right? But we will then be greeted by others. But if one is in such a situation, and it's a sad situation to be in, and certainly we need to try to keep ourselves connected, even if life situations leave us alone, right? But to try to build up relationships and try to stay healthy in that manner, but to recognize that ultimately everyone is the same way alone as we pass to the next stage. And then, on the contrary, then those who have preceded us, they will be there with us. V'yachshav achar kain, and then while the person is in that state, a person can think, V'histalkut koved masa'am v'chovatam v'tzarchehem me'alav, how I don't have all of those responsibilities, all of their needs, all that I needed to have to supply in the past. There are some benefits to flying solo. V'yachshov zeh mitova mitovot haborei alav, and to recognize again, if this is a situation that God has put me into, then this is the best situation for me to be in right now. But I can't emphasize enough, that doesn't mean that we resign ourselves, but a person should see what they can do to try to build up. I just saw there was a new Guinness World Book record of the oldest couple to get married, with a composite of 202 years and a couple of hundred days between them. He was 100 years old. She was 102. A Jewish couple. They met in the senior living center. They had a 9-year romance, and they tied the knot. They both went down the aisle in a wheelchair, right? But they are married. They both had marriages of 60 something plus years, right? And then they both became widowed. So one should not resign themselves to to uh, to any situation that they're in, but one does need to see the positive in whatever situation one is in during the time that one is in that situation, and then but then see what one can do. Right? I have a yard site on Thursday for my stepmother, who my father, after my mother passed away and her husband passed away, they married. I had a wonderful brother who passed away and sister from that marriage, besides my original family. And it was a tremendous bracha, tremendous, tremendous blessing.
Sorry to
And
hear that.
I'm sorry.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was a tremendous blessing that they had each other, and that I had a mother that way since I think I was 9 years old when they remarried, and it was a tremendous blessing all around. My cousin, who's a very very a wonderful speaker, a very insightful person. So when he spoke at my father's funeral, he spoke about the Tehillim, the psalm where we say Shiru lanu shir chadash, that we have to be willing to sing a new song. Meaning sometimes the song we thought we'd be singing um, is not the song that we're singing anymore. It comes to an end, and a person needs to be willing to shiru lanu shir chadash, to have a new song. Right? So again, I can't emphasize enough that a person should not resign themselves to being alone, to being in a lonely situation. But while one is in that situation, so then one should see the positive aspects and utilize those positive aspects. And who knows if that situation wasn't orchestrated by Hashem, by God, in order for a person to make certain gains in who they are in their own development, and then be ready for another situation afterwards. And to think this is Tovot Habori Alav. This is from God's gifts. This is from God's goodness to me. If this is a person who's into this world and the good and the wealth that it offers, the person is easy, is in a much lighter, easier state now in terms of what needs to be exerted and spent on family. And now that responsibility, that yoke has been lifted. And this is a person who's focused on spirituality, on one's eternity. Then the person's mind will be at peace and have the time to really introspect and really try to grow in that factor. And therefore there were certain people who called the Prushim, Hasidim, who would leave their houses and go out to the mountains, Kedei sheyifnu libotam, in order that they could turn their hearts lavodat Elokim, focusing on God. V'chein hayu haneviyim, and so too the prophets, bisman hanevuah, during the time of their prophecy, yotzim mima'onotayim, they would leave where they were living, umidbodedim, and they would do what Hasidim today call hisbodedus, which is having some time alone, some solitude, to just be with oneself. That's one of the tragedies of the modern world that we live in, that we don't have a moment. Right? You see a person waiting, or waiting online at the grocery store, right? It's like a person can't be alone with their own thoughts for a moment, and you've got to pull out the phone and and see what's going on, and see any texts, WhatsApp groups, any emails, and to really, that's always one of the real beauties of of Sabbath observance is that it forces a person to unplug. Natalie and I always say, the nicest thing is on Shabbos when we get to walk home together from shul. It's a nice 25-minute walk, and we walk home together, and it's so nice because there's absolutely no disturbance, and there's nothing buzzing in any of our pockets, and there's not, it's beautiful. It's
You ever,
beautiful.
what I always think is kind of funny, it's not that I don't do it too. But when you're on a plane and you're landing, like everybody's pulls out. I'm here. I landed. Like they're gonna figure it out. You never used to say, instantly. Here I am.
Right,
It's
right,
kind of
right.
funny, but I
Yeah,
do
no,
it
yeah,
too.
I
I'm
mean,
not making fun because I do that too. But,
yeah, well, yeah. I have to update my stat. I mean, I never got into Facebook, but now Facebook is ready old stuff, But I have to update my status, as if everyone is holding their breaths, wondering
waiting to find
what
out where you
what am I
are.
what am I having for breakfast?
Exactly.
They must know that, I have to update my. I remember visiting someone in the hospital,
Mm.
and and she said like, "Oh, I just have to update my status," It's like, whoa, 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 and
In the hospital, she's thinking of that.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So we live in a world that is the opposite of this hisbodedus, of this having a little time just to be with ourselves, just to be with our thoughts, just to try to, prayer is not meant to be just during, I go to synagogue and I pray. It's meant to be a running conversation that we have, and this idea of this connection that we are meant to have, right? So the Nevi'im, they would leave their places, their houses, their neighborhoods, and have some hisbodedus, and have some time alone to focus on their spirituality, on God. Kamoshi Yadat, like we know, Me'inin Eliyahu Elisha, right? Well, in the book of Kings, when the mantle of prophecy was being passed over from Eliyahu to Elisha. And it's very interesting. It was passed over when Eliyahu had the whole showdown with the prophets of Baal, with the prophets of idolatry, and they each made an altar, and to see to whom would the fire come down and answer and consume their sacrifice. And he said to the children of Israel, until when are you sitting on both sides of the fence? Right? And the fire came down and consumed Eliyahu. And then the wife of King Achav of Ahab, who's Izebel, so she was trying to kill him, and he had to run away. And he said, God, take me, take me. Enough's enough. And he said, Kano kineti, I'm so jealous, I'm so upset with the children of Israel that they have abandoned the covenant. Right? Interestingly, as an aside, who comes to every circumcision, every Brit that we have? We have a special chair set up for Eliyahu Navi, for Elijah the prophet. And one of the honors is the baby is placed onto that chair and then is held while the circumcision takes place. And one of the reasons given is that Elijah said, they have rejected the covenant. To which Hashem said, you think they've rejected the covenant? Okay, I'd like you to make a personal appearance at every single one of their covenants, because Brit means covenant, and the circumcision, it's a Brit Milah, it's a covenant of circumcision. So Hashem said, you're too exacting, you're too condemning of the children of Israel. You can't serve as the Navi, as the prophet anymore. Time to bring in some fresh blood. And who was that? That was Elisha. Elisha was the prophet that followed Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet. And what does it say there? Shneimar alav. It says over there, Shnei masar tzemadim lefanav, v'hu b'shnei masar. It says over there that there were 12 different pairs of oxen, each one with a person who was tending to those oxen as they're plowing up the very massive field that Elisha's family owned. V'hu b'shnei masar. He was in the 12th one. And the commentators say that the reason we're letting us know this is to show that once he was given the nod, we'll see in a second, when Eliyahu gave him a small hint, when Eliyahu took his mantle and tossed it onto Elisha, and that was meant to show to him, right? Literally, we have the expression passing the mantle, right? But that's probably maybe that's where it comes from. Right, but literally, he took the cloak, the mantle, and he put it onto him. Elisha heard that. Hevinoto understood, and without any hesitation, that's what we mentioned. All of these cattle, all of these oxen, that there was much wealth that his family had, but that did not hold him back at all. But what did he say? Eshkana lavi ula ami. Let me go give a drink to my father and mother. Meaning, he understood he'd be leaving his house now. So let me say goodbye to my parents. Let me say goodbye to them in the manner of showing them respect, serving them. Let me eshka give them, or kiss, maybe it's kiss. Let me give a kiss now to my father, to my mother. Ve'elcha acharecha, and I will go after you. And it says, Vayelech acharei Eliyahu vayisharteu. And he went after Eliyahu, and he served him under his tutelage until Eliyahu was taken, and then Elisha became the prophet of the many prophets, but at that time period, the prophet of Israel. So what do we see? Elisha understood that becoming a prophet meant leaving the home. And this part I can understand, right? When he says that the very righteous would leave from their houses and their relatives to go to the mountains, that I could definitely relate to very well, right? That's not where I have an issue, right? A person needs to carve out some time for oneself and to have just some time to think, to connect to God, and if we haven't connected to ourselves, then we can't connect to God. And the first thing is to really be in touch with where I am at. They tell a story about one of these prushim. Shenichnas l'medina achat. He entered a certain state, a certain city. Lohorot et yoshveha, in order to instruct the inhabitants there, avodat halukim, in the service of God. Vayimtseim, and he found three strange things there, or three unusual things there. Lovshim tseva echad, everyone was wearing the same colored garment. B'malbusheim v'tachshiteim, in their garments, in their adornments, it was all the same. V'ra'ah kivreim, he saw that they had their burial plots, Eitzel pitchei bateyem, very close to their doorways, to the entrances of their homes. Right? The cemetery was not a few miles away or miles away. Everyone had their personal burial plot very close to the doorway of their home. V'lo ra'ah beineim isha, and he didn't see any women there at all. V'sha'alo tam al zeh, and he asked them about this. V'amru lo, and they said, Ma sha'anu lovshim tzeva echad, that everyone is wearing the same uniform colored garment. Shelo yeh nikar banu ha'ani min ha'ashir. There is no way to recognize, to see any difference between a person who is poor and a person who is wealthy. Shelo yavah hashor litkaot, and that way those who are wealthy don't feel haughty in what they are wearing, in their garments and their attire, ulhitpa'er ba'oshro, and to feel that they are better than anyone else because of their wealth. V'yavo ha'ani litbazot etzel atzmo, and that way a poor person doesn't feel lower, doesn't feel degraded, doesn't feel embarrassed, right, in front of others. V'sheyidme inyano al ha'adama ki inyano tachteha, that the same way that we will be when we are under the earth, that same way will be when we are over the earth. The Talmud tells a story that during a period of time, then poor people couldn't afford the proper burial shrouds, garments that for their relatives when they would pass away, and they would just run away. They couldn't handle the cost. And since then, established in time of the Talmud, and that's how we do it today, everyone is clothed, I should say, in the same exact garment. The garments called the tachrichin, the garments that a person is clothed in before burial. Everyone, there's no there's no designer, and there's no this material, that material. Simple cotton garments. Everyone is exactly the same, right? Actually, this Shabbos, if any of you can join us, we're having a talk, a number of talks from a wonderful person by the name of Bruce Bloom. Bruce is in charge of the taharas. The tahara is the preparation of the bodies for burial, and there's a certain way that it's done, and it's done in Los Angeles, and we've had situations where we needed to have it done over here. So on Sunday morning, we'll have a training session on how it needs to be done, on how it should be done. That way, if it needs to be done here in Orange County, we have people who are trained to do it, and all of you are welcome to join us. We're having a highly subsidized Friday night meal at the shul. I think $18 for a person, but the maximum for any family is $36, highly subsidized. Should be a really nice Shabbos. So any of you who can come and join us, just let the office know so that we will know how many to prepare for. But I joined in with Bruce at one of these, and I thought I'd be very squeamish. I wasn't sure how I would deal with being with, but it's amazing. There's such kedusha, there's such holiness that you feel in preparing this body for its ultimate ultimate stage. That it was actually very, 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 very uplifting. Yeah. So that they all wore the same garments, the same way that we'll wear the same at that point. They said, let's wear the same at this point. I told a story about Mr. Reichman, right, in Canada, who was a tremendously, fabulously wealthy person and tremendous philanthropist, right, supporting a tremendous amount of Torah institutions and just all institutions all around. I mean, he was a household name there. One of the stories is on a Shabbos, he went to visit someone in the hospital, and the person was on the 9th floor. So it's on Shabbos. He didn't take the elevator. He's climbing up, and about the 5th or 6th floor, he got very, very tired. So he decided, let me go into the 6th floor. Let me sit down a little bit, and then I'll continue on. So he wanders onto the 6th floor. There's a chair there or a little couch there, and he sits down there. And then he is ready to continue his trek up to the 9th floor. So he goes to open the door, and it's locked. Right? And he had wandered onto the psychiatric floor of the hospital. So he said to the nurse, "Oh, can you please open the door?" And she said, "Sir, you have to go back to your room." And she said, no, you don't understand. I'm Mr. Reichman. He said, "I'm sure you are, Mr. Reichman. Please go back to your room." It was like someone saying, "No, I'm Mr. Rockefeller." Yes, I'm sure. Yes, Mr. Bloomberg. Please go back to your room now. So that's who he was. But he left instructions for his children that upon his passing, that they should insist that he should be buried with his favorite pair of socks, with his socks. And the children read that after he passed away. And hey there, how are you? Good to see you. And they spoke to the Chevra Kadisha, the burial society, and listen, it's so important to my father. Please, he's done so much. He has supported the whole Chevra Kadisha, the whole burial society. Right? Our family has bankrolled it, and they tried every type of pressure, but the Chevra Kadisha said everyone gets buried the same way. I'm so sorry, but we cannot. And after the funeral, there was another letter that he had written that was meant to be opened up after the funeral. And the letter to his children said, I'm sure by now you have realized that my request about the socks was turned down. And he told his children, you can't even take a pair of socks with you. So make sure that you continue in my philanthropic manner, right? With all that the family has, make sure you continue, because you can't even take a lousy pair of socks. Yeah. So the reason why they all had the same garments was to make sure that people didn't feel full of themselves because of their garments, or feel diminished because of their garments. They tell about one of the kings, Shemit Arev ben Avadav, who would sometimes mix in with his subjects, with his people. And he would not be wearing his royal garments. He would just mix in with the peasants, we'll say. And he would dress as one of them in order to not be so full of himself, to recognize that basically we're all the same. And that we have the burial area right next to our homes, that we should take that message and recognize that that's where we're all going to end up. And v'nazmin lanu hatzeda hamagat otanu l'makom hamenucha, and will prepare the provisions that we need for that eventual trip. Right? When a person realizes that, so then a person won't get so worked up over something that's not really of such importance. Right? You hear all these stories. That a person, that a husband and wife, had a big fight, and very, very, let's say, unkind words, right? As one of them left to work that morning, and then a tragedy happened, and those were their last words that they shared with one another, right? When a person recognizes our mortality, it helps us keep everything in perspective, and make sure that we when we say goodbye to someone, it's always a very nice thing. Sometimes in a marriage, I love you, but if you're upset about something, no, instead of that, I love you, and right, it's okay to point something out, but shouldn't I love you, but it drives me crazy when you whatever. I love you, and it drives me crazy when you whatever it might be, right? But that was the idea of the location of their kvarim, of their burial areas. And that you saw that we separated, that there are no women or children here. We have designated a city very close to here. And if they need something, we need something. We'll go there. Yashlim Sarcho, take care of it. And then we come back here, because we saw Bamashi chanes aleina mitidrat halev v'otzim hadaga, how much worries and we say bandwidth we spend, the Godel Hayegia, and how much hard work and toil goes into Vamenucha Mikol Zebrakatan, and how our minds are at peace from all that when they're in the next town. V'livchor binyanei olam haba, and that way we can choose the olam haba, the world to come aspects, and push aside the olam hazeh, the this world aspects. V'tavu dvarim b'nei aparush, and he liked what they had to say. Vayivarech otam, and he blessed them. V'yashreim b'inyaneim. Right now, I don't go for this last one. I don't hear that at all. Right? If a person is blessed to have wife, spouse, children, right? It's there. It's a gift from God. And yes, it keeps us busy. And yes, a lot of time and a lot of energy. And yeah, but I don't see that as, to me, this does not sound like a Torah system model to have the wives and kids over there and I could just be over here. Right? To me, that does not, it doesn't sit well by me. I'm all in what he said before. The even once a week, whatever it is, it can be once a day, having some time to just think and solitude. Right? The hisbodedus, that works for me. But to have a living arrangement set that not the husband, not with the wife and kids, so he could focus on his spirituality, right? The way we look at it now, our spirituality is what we're doing with our family, with our spouse, with our children, with our responsibilities. It's not by shirking that. Excuse me, but that becomes our. Excuse me. That thank you. That becomes our mikdash. That becomes our, we say one of the things, we wash our hands, right, in a certain manner in the morning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right, that's the netilat yadayim. Excuse me. That we do in the morning, and there are a number of reasons given for that. And one of them is that the Kohen, the priest, when he would enter into the Beit HaMikdash, into the temple, he would wash his hands. So too in the morning, what do? We wash our hands in that manner. Why? Because we're entering into our temple, our mikdash. What is our mikdash? Our relationships with spouses, our relationship with family, our relationship with neighbors, our relationship at work, our dealings. That is our Beit HaMikdash. That is our temple. And the same way the Kohen, when the priest, when he go to do the divine service in the temple, he would need to wash his hands. We wake up in the morning and we're going to be dealing with our divine service. And when the kids are little, our divine service could be, Daddy, wipe me. That could be our divine service. That's what we got to do. There's a little human being here who needs help, and you can help. That's divine service. The story is told that how's it go? Yeah, I don't know the whole story. A person who wakes up in the middle of the night because Mommy, Daddy, I'm thirsty, to get the kid a drink of water, right? So one can do it like, oh, I'm so exhausted. When will he learn, or when will she learn to get her own water? Or a person could say, wow, I have an opportunity to do an incredible chesed, an incredible act of kindness. Here is a little person who's in need. And thank God I'm able to help. It could be a bother. It could be a chesed, an act of kindness. It all depends how we view it. So to me, that is our Beit HaMikdash. That is our temple. But it could very well be, let's realize, this was written centuries and centuries ago. And the nature of the relationships of husband and wife were very, very different. Certainly, if there were multiple wives in a relationship, it's bound to be a very, very different relationship. And it was a very, very, and I guess the wives were the ones who were really doing all the work for the kids anyhow. It's a very patriarchal society, right? But in our world, I don't think there's anyone who would say that this is the ideal that we would try to work for. But I think we see the kedusha, we see the holiness in the day to day, even in the daddy white me. That's where we see our kedusha, and that's how we are supposed to spend it. Okay, my friends, let's call it over here. What number are you up to in Safaria?
I was just listening, so I don't know.
Kathy, you got it?
I think 66.
Okay. I will double check that to make sure. Yeah. Okay. Good seeing all of you. Have a Shavua Tov. Any of you can join us for Shabbos, please, please, please do. It'll be wonderful to have you with us. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye,
Thanks,
Beth.
Rabbi.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.